Well, hello everyone. So happy to see you here. While we're waiting for everyone to come in, if you wouldn't mind putting your program name and your name in the chat for me, that would be wonderful. And I'm going to start you guys off with a question that you can be thinking about that you can put in the chat as well. I want you to think about a time in your life when you were given an instruction that was like clear as mud. That instruction was not clear, and like how the lack of clarity on it impacted you. And I'd love for someone when I come to this point in the training and ask for an example. It can, even if you want to be as vulnerable as talking about a time maybe you didn't give great instruction or something, and you're looking for uh, ways to be more clear in what you are trying to say. Think about a time of that when you got given something or you gave instructions that were about clear as mud and kind of the outcomes on that as you're just putting your name and everything into our chat. And I am just going to kick us right off. So first of all, just welcome. Happy to have everyone here. Can you all see my PowerPoint okay? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Are we good? Okay. All right. Well, today we're going to continue our tiny training series on creating a culture that families and importantly employees want to be a part of. And I'm excited to just share with you about values today, one of my favorite subjects to share with childcare providers. So happy that you're here and glad that we get to continue and move on with this. 0 to 5 Montana works to increase access to early childhood care. We work to increase access to education while supporting families, uplifting voices, and empowering childcare businesses across the state of Montana. And we have kind of two sides to our organization. We have a policy side that really works on childcare best practices and advocacy and things like that to help move the system forward and give credibility to you and what you do. And then we have a program side where we work on capacity building and business supports with free services such as one-on-one business TA. It's our goal at Montana Child Care Business Connect, which is the program side of our organization here. It is our goal that you have a childcare business in Montana that you not only can open, but if you're wanting it to grow, you can help it grow. We'd really like to see sustainability happen in the state. So we'd like to see programs open and stay open instead of the revolving door of them opening and closing and opening and closing. But sometimes that takes support. And so Montana Child Care Business Connect is dedicated to supporting you so that your area can stay open all the time. Sorry, letting a couple more people in from the waiting room. And then lastly, but not least, we want your business to thrive. And it is not a dirty word in childcare to earn as a childcare business owner. I'd really like for everyone to know that that's not, bad, that the goal here is that you would earn a profit and to be thinking about all the ways that you can do that and be sustainable. So we're deep into our series here. We're already on week 3 of this series, so I'm excited to have everyone here. So today we started out talking about our mission and what does that mission look like. That should be talking about the work that you're doing right now. And then we talked about vision last week, and that's what we see out into the future and what you're hoping to get through your program into the future. And today we're going to talk about how you portray who you are, what you speak about your program. And we do that through values. And so we're going to spend some time talking about some good basic values. How do we define our values for our program? Because each program is different. You guys all have your own voice in the way that you do things. So we'll just kick this right off. I'm going to first ask if there's any questions out there that I can clarify from last week or the week before. Anyone has anything that they'd like to just ask off the get-go? Otherwise, we'll get started. All right. So if mission is your foundation and vision is your direction, values are basically, you can think of them like your operating system. Okay, values define how people behave within your program. It's going to help you show how staff will interact. It helps with how decisions are made. It helps with how families experience your company culture. Values are not just words. I really want you guys to know that we are not talking about just picking some words that feel good, that you're like, yeah, that sounds great. I believe in that. Okay. Values are things that shape behavior. So everything that you do, your families do, and your staff do should be in alignment with your values if you want to, if you want to have families and staff that follow the behavior that you're hoping for your organization. Really important that we think about it into that deep of a level. So here's the key connection. Your values are going to directly impact your culture, and your culture 100% directly impacts your recruitment and your retention, both of families and employees. So if your values are unclear, your culture is going to be inconsistent. Um, Staff are not going to appreciate inconsistency, and that makes it easier for them to leave. Okay. It does make it easier for families to justify leaving as well. Today, we're going to take your values and make them something usable, something that you can both hire for and coach employees through and families through in your program. So sometimes we have employees that we need them to do things a little bit different, right? When you can align their beliefs in what you're valuing in your program with a coaching session, it makes it feel so much more like a partnership and more like a learning opportunity than it does a correction or a talking to, for lack of a better word. It really helps them in those sorts of ways. And so we're going to talk about how do we um, coach for values. So why do values matter? Anyone in here has anyone taken the time to identify your personal core values, like what you believe in personally for you as a person? Anyone? Anyone want to share like what their number one core value is, the thing that wakes them up in the morning and is their number one? And we're not talking about work, we're going to talk about personal core values for a second. Kindness. Michelle, you are a very kind person. I believe that is a core value for you. Yeah. So there's a book out there. I'm gonna talk about it a little bit next week too, but it's called Finding Your Strengths. It's a Strengths Finder book. And in those books, it helps you identify your top five core values. And those are really important things to think about. And I encourage people before they try to pick values for their program. I love that, Ashley. Be better today than I was yesterday. Bridget, honesty is in my top five too. I love honesty as a core value. And honestly, I think it's a really important one for a lot of families too. Integrity is beautiful. Steph, I love that. Transparency, loyalty, honesty. So this book that I'm talking about, it's a great book for defining your personal core value beliefs, but then you can take that a step further and take it to now that you know who you are at the core of your person and you're the business owner, you own your organization, you can take that to the next level and create values that matter for the work you're trying to do. And you can't do that until you have the mission and then you have the forward thinking vision. So these values really make a very clear third step in this process of creating culture. Um, Sorry, letting the last few people in from the waiting room there. So most challenges in childcare programs are not about knowledge, and they're not really about skills. They're about behavior and expectations. Who agrees? I think a lot of you know how to entertain these amazing people, these tiny humans that you're taking care of every day. I think you have a lot of knowledge and those sorts of things, but sometimes their behaviors are a little bit different. And when we have employees, the behaviors don't always line up with our expectations. And so that's really important for you to think about too. And actually, most conflict does not come from bad intentions. Honestly, it comes from unclear expectations. So, values are a factor. It is a piece in your leadership toolbox that you need to have that you can help that helps solve a problem. But it only helps when they're clearly defined and listen really closely, you guys, and consistently reinforced. This is not something that you're marking off a checklist and saying, I have this on my to-do list to become licensed. I had to identify some values, so here they are. That's not what we're talking about. A strong leader is going to guide not only families, but employees through understanding and knowing what your core beliefs are for your program. And pretty much all their work and all of your work is going to be attached to that. Values define how things are done. It's not just what gets done, but how it gets done. And they create consistency across your team. And I think consistency is really critical when we're looking for cohesive teams. Without values, each staff member kind of operates based on their own interpretation of what's acceptable. And we all know that that's 100% what could happen when things aren't clear. Okay, values are the thing that sets that clear expectation that you can actually hold people accountable to. So, as a leader, it's really important that you make it clear to your staff what you value as the program. And that clarity is going to reduce conflict because people know what's expected before the issue even arises. From a retention standpoint, this is critical. Staff are more likely to stay in environments where expectations are clear and consistent. Families are more likely to stay where experiences are predictable and aligned. You want to bring people into your program that are aligned with what you believe in. Values are the thing that create that consistency. And I'm going to tell you, it sounds like it's this big ominous thing, but it's not. It's a very simple step that's often missed. So when I talk to people about this, a lot of times they're like, well, I've thought about my personal values a million times. I know who I am. I know what I stand for. I know what I believe in, but I've never really put that to terms or words for my business. And that's what we want to do today is to think about what is it that your program values the most. Um, so I asked at the beginning if someone would share a story about how it feels when something is clear as mud to you. If they had a story of when they've given unclear expectations or they've received unclear directions. Does anyone want to come off mute and share a story of being given by a leader or yourself as a leader being given some sort of instruction and it being clear as mud to you? I'm interested in hearing our stories. I think we probably have some similar ones.
I was working in an auto shop before I started doing daycare again.
Mm-hmm.
And due to some health issues, I got moved to like a receptionist type of thing where I
Mm-hmm.
was just gonna like, do the meet and greet and, just simple things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And my boss at the time, she started having some control issues and whatnots. Anyhow, um, she brought in a big stack of papers and she said, I need you to reconcile these for me. And I was like, what? She's like, you work in an office now. I need you to reconcile these for me. And I'm like, I've got a diesel mechanic degree. I don't know what you're talking about. I had no idea what she meant to, I didn't know what I was reconciling. I didn't know I had an issue. And so when I tried to ask her what she meant, she told me I needed to figure it out. And when I started to try to figure it out, I'm like, I don't think this is something that you want me to just try and figure out. I feel like this is something that I need to be taught, because I'm not an accountant. So
Right.
basically, she slapped a whole bunch of stuff down and wanted me to do accounting work for her when I had no idea. I'd never done it before. I'd never even heard of it really.
Yeah.
Um, so by the time I left there, I could do it kind of, but I
Yeah.
was in a lot of trouble because I didn't know what she was talking about.
Right.
I was
Oh,
like, what do we need to
perfect
reconcile
example.
about, you know? I thought
Yeah.
I'd heard the word and I took it completely different
Uh-huh.
than what it actually meant. So,
And that happens, I think, more often than we even know. And sometimes we're afraid to like, so kudos to you for being like, hey, I have no idea what you're talking about. I need help. Kudos to you for doing that. But think about how many times maybe a parent might hear something or even a staff member who's afraid to like really ask that question. Like, I need some clarity here. And so if we can, from the heart things, that heart that's in our hands that are holding that heart, if the heart piece of our program can be crystal clear for every person who comes in contact with your program, some really good things can come from it. Um, but vague values equal a very weak culture. It's super hard for you to feel dedicated to someone who doesn't want to take the time to help you. I mean, that's really, really frustrating. And that's probably a really blatant example. We can think of sometimes when maybe it's not as blatant as Steph's example, but it is one of the most common and costly mistakes. So programs list values and they say words like respect, quality of care, but they don't really define them. And here's the problem. I'd like all of you for the next 2 seconds to write what respect means to you in the chat. Really quick, what does respect mean to you? Now I'm going to read some of these answers. Respect means to treat people as you want to be treated, giving what you want back. Okay, let's keep coming. Christy says it's hard to describe, but a two-way street where I treat others kindly and they do the same even when we don't agree. I like that one. Listening and communicating, it's listening and understanding. Due to you, yeah. Appreciate treatment. Okay. So the good news is that you guys have a little bit clearer understanding or respect here. It is about how we're treating others and how we're being treated back. But can you see how easily it would be, even if you asked your parents, what does respect mean? And what different answers you would get back for different things like that. Quality, that's a huge word. What does quality mean to parents? If you're telling them, I'm running a quality program, that could mean a million different things, right? And what does that look like? How are you describing those words is what values are. They aren't words, they're actions. They're how you carry and do your mission and your vision. Okay. So if we do ask people about respect, one person's going to think maybe friendly, another might think that it's avoiding conflict, another might think that it means following hierarchy. If you're working with a lot of boomers, respect is, there's levels of things. And if you're working with a generation alpha, um, new assistant or helper in your program, let me tell you, they weren't raised understanding levels of things, right? So we're working in a multicultural workforce and all different kinds of things. So we have to be able to define and make very clear what it is that we value. When we have inconsistency show up in our behavior, and that behavior is going to impact our culture. When expectations are unclear, accountability becomes really difficult. It is hard to hold someone accountable when you haven't made it clear what you want and need to have happen. This is often where frustration builds for both leadership and staff. And the issue isn't that you don't have values. The issue is simply that you haven't made them clear or defined to them ways that they can act and do these values on a daily basis. Steph put holding space and understanding differences of opinions and values, all while accepting and still being encouraging of their views and values. It's a really good one. I like that. Okay, but on the opposite end, okay, a strong value is going to be extremely valuable to you. So they do have three key characteristics, and I want you guys to really just pause. If you're multitasking now, just really take a look at this piece. These are defined by these three things, okay? What's nice about having characteristics is that it's a defined, observable, and enforceable. So if it has those three things, it's going to be a strong value. So defined means that you clearly state what it looks like in behavior. Okay, so what does caring look like in behavior? Someone tell me, what does a caring person look like in behavior? Maybe soft words. What else could it look like? Warm approach. Yeah, that's good, Bridget. Yeah. So it has to be defined of what it would look like in behavior. Then second is observable. And observable means that you can see it happening or not happening in a real situation. Okay. So it has to be something that you can see. Um, I can see there that when you were raising your voice with little Tommy, that might not have been reaching our caring value, right? Okay, when you were raising your voice. Now, I can see you cared a lot about Tommy and raised your voice because he was going to hurt himself. Looks very different, right? In those types of things as well. So just remember that we can absolutely observe it and see it as well. Really important. And then enforceable means, I hate the word enforceable, but really what I'm trying to say is that you can coach or correct and hold people accountable to that value. Are we perfect all the time? I mean, I took a promise to like love, honor my husband, and sometimes I say things to him that are not very honoring. I mean, we do it, right? We're not perfect people, okay? But I can identify when it's happening like that, right? And he can express his feelings to me, or I could express my feelings to him. And that's what's really important when I say enforceable, that it's coachable. It's something that you can correct and hold people to when it happens. Okay. For example, instead of saying respect, you might define it as we communicate directly, kindly, and professionally with families and each other in our programs, even when we're addressing concerns. See how much better that is giving a picture for your staff? It's better because sometimes I think a staff member might hear the word respect, and what that means is you're supposed to shut up and just listen to the boss. Okay, that's not at all what these words are depicting. These words, we directly and kindly and professionally want that communication. We don't be quiet, we're communicating. And we're going to do this when we address concerns. And so by saying that, concerns are allowed to be addressed, right? But this is how we address them. This is the value that it lines up with. And in this way, you can observe it and you can coach to it and you can address it when it's not happening. That's what transforms values into ideas and into leadership tools that you can just keep in your pocket at all times. And when you consistently are reinforcing these behaviors, your culture becomes stable. And that stability is what supports retention. Do you guys agree that stability is not the first word you think of when it comes to staffing your programs? Anyone out there like, oh, I'm always looking for a body in this classroom. I'm always looking for something like that. You have one of the most challenging jobs out there in keeping your ratios good, keeping your staff together, having staff. You have to be in contact. It's not like your staff can just say, oh, I have a little cold, I'll work remote today, right? You need their body there with you doing their thing. And so there's a lot of things that go with having to have that person there. And how do we support them and still have them do the job that we need? When it comes to this type of focus, we really need to like laser in it. If you have too many values, none of them are going to carry weight. And that's why the book that I was talking about has you pick your top 5 core values. And I do say limit your business core values to somewhere between 4 and 6 so you can completely identify what truly matters most in your program. Your values, these are going to become your non-negotiables. They're the behaviors that you expect from everyone on your team. And it's especially important for hiring and retaining your employees. When your values are clear, when they're limited, you can hire for a good alignment and effectively. And when your staff understand those expectations from the very, very, very beginning, they're more likely to succeed and to stay. And if they know that they're not in a good alignment with you, they're less likely to waste your time and even try to come, which is also important for you guys. More values don't create a stronger culture. The clearest of clear values do. So values in action, this is where your values become operational, and this is where most programs stop short. For each value, you need to define 3 things. The first thing is, what does this value look like? Specific behaviors that it looks like. The second is, what does it not look like? This is just as important as what it does look like. It's going to help you create clarity and boundaries. And third, how does this show up different in our relationships with children and with staff and with families? So a good example of this would be with families, it might look like, so for the value of communication, for families, it might look like proactive updates. And with staff, it might look like direct and respectful conversations. And with children, it might look like clear and supportive guidance. When we are at this level of clarity, it's going to give you the right language for coaching when it's needed. Instead of saying, this isn't working, you can't say that. You can say, this behavior does not align with our value of good communication. And that makes a huge difference in the way we do things. That shift is going to make feedback clearer, more objective, and much easier to receive. So when we're communicating our values, they are only going to work if we're consistently communicating them. So these should start from day 1 in the interview process. In interviews, when you hire them, that means you're asking skills-based questions, but you're also asking behavior questions that don't just cover experience. You want to get a feel for if they're going to be a good fit. In onboarding, you need to clearly, very clearly set the expectations from the beginning. And in staff meetings, that's where you're going to reinforce them. You'll revisit them on a regular basis. And yes, for our staff, we have to do this. We're humans. We forget too. I need to be reminded some days that I love my husband and married a man that I love, right? Some days we don't feel that way. And we're just as human on these things, and we have to remember that. So in coaching conversations, we want to use our values and we want to use that to framework our feedback. And then in parent communication, you want to reflect those values and how you interact with your parents. So I'm going to have you guys this week just think about one value that you want to change or to identify for your program as far as that looks in behavior terms. And I'm going to challenge you to go back and do this, to write down that value, but define what it looks like. What does it look like with our parents? What does it look like with our children? And what does it look like with our staff? And make sure that you clearly define that. And then define what it doesn't look like. And next week, when we come back, I'm going to ask one of you to kick us off with your value, with a value you identified and what that would look like. So in closing, I just want you guys to kind of think about this progression. Okay, clear values are what's going to lead to that consistent behavior. And consistent behavior is what is going to create a strong culture. And strong culture is what definitely improves your recruitment and retention. Values are not just what you say, and they're not what they are what people experience every single day in your program. So as leaders, your role is to make sure that those expectations are visible, clear, and consistent at all times. In our next session, we're going to take this even just a touch further by focusing on how we embed these values into our systems, because culture isn't just sustained by good intentions, it is sustained by structure. So we've talked about a lot of the heart stuff these last 3 weeks. Next week, we're going to talk about the down and dirty how-to, which is why someone is going to come back with this homework assignment done and actually tell me how they came about creating their values and going on for how they decided how it looked for parents and for kids and for everyone else. And so with that, I'm just going to leave it open for any questions. I never feel like 30 minutes is enough. Perfect. Well, if there's no questions, I am gonna let you all go for the day. Thank you for staying on and hanging with me for 2 extra minutes. If you want to fill out the QR code, if you want to snap a picture of the QR code and take the survey, I would love it.